so many doubts about rain tires on ovals they can't drive. Rain tires have wear, they less than our despair. They're even racing 5 wide. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. It's just too bad, wait and see. Sunday we had it, the rain tire perfection, the lovers, the racers, and me.
Great work, Massie. Hello, everyone. Welcome on into the Happy Hour podcast. My name is Trey
Lyle, and yeah, it's just playing a little jokes with you.
Thank you for that.
I was battling a cold this week, so I think that was what happened at the start. So sorry about that, everyone. But welcome on into the Happy Hour podcast. My name is Trey Lyle. Joining me as he does every week, Michael Massie, M_Massie22. As always, Davey Segal back in the saddle this week as well. And also joining us once again, he joined us last season where he broke some breaking news that everyone cheats in NASCAR. George Balfanz Jr., obviously the tire changer for both Nice, Venturini Motorsports, and Alpha Prime Racing. George, thanks so much for joining in, and how are you doing?
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm doing all right. Kind of getting ready for the meat and potatoes of the race season to kick into gear here. So just trying to relax as much as I can at home before long weekends of travel.
Sounds like fun for you, my friend. All right, Front Stretch Garage is already popping. Gustavo says hello. Sean says, what's up, guys? How's everyone's doing? We're doing pretty well. Great show lined up for you, as always. Sit back, relax, crack open that cold one, unless you're driving, of course, because here at Front Stretch, we ask for responsible driving. And George, you're up first with our first topic, a very unique weekend at New Hampshire with a lot of rain, and ended up having unique pit stops at the end of the race.
Yeah, at least for the Cup race, I know it looked like they had a couple of competition cautions. I didn't watch it, but I saw some replays of guys changing tires without their helmets and such. We kind of had the same deal happen to start the Xfinity race on Saturday, where NASCAR, we fired the engines at the start of the race, and NASCAR said, all right, we're coming down pit road. It started to rain pretty hard, and said it is mandatory that you change to rain tires. They did not give us the option. That's something that in the past they've given us that leeway to choose. Okay, do you want rain tires or wet tires? Or sorry, rain tires or slick tires. And it was mandated, and it sounded like the Cup Series, they did the same thing. But I thought it looked like it was some pretty good racing there.
Yeah, and I think the thing, the rain tires were a big hit. I think the thing a lot of people were complaining about was like the teams not having a choice in what they really just kind of handcuffed by NASCAR, and then the fact that have the non-competitive stops there, or we had the non-competitive stops, where there's no race off pit road that, we can determine the race win a lot of weeks. So I was interested, and you know better than any of us, George, like when it is wet, should we have live pit stops? Should we put that in the team's hands? What do you think about it? I could see how that would be really dangerous, but
I think absolutely it's been a part of racing for a long time. You look at IMSA, you look at any other road course, or I guess circle tracks that run in the rain. There are very few that do, but we've pit in the rain often. Look at Charlotte in 2020. for the Xfinity race when it was a flood. We've been in those situations. We're professionals. We know what we're doing. We know what we need to prepare for.
Hey, you won me over right there. Let's have some live pit stops next time it rains. We've had, the guinea pig era of the wet weather tires. Let's release the handcuffs and run it like a normal NASCAR race or other series where, you have the choice of the tire. If you think it's dry enough, it is your American right to put on dry tires and go out there and risk it for the biscuit. And let these pit crew guys do their thing. I mean, if you had the best pit crew on Sunday, you were handicapped because you weren't able to go out and do your job, and show them that you're the best. So yeah, I think we're ready to unleash that valve. What do you guys think?
I feel I fall somewhere in the middle here because I think, and they've done a good job of it, NASCAR has to and does and will always put safety first. As cliche as that is, as boring of an answer as that is, it's important. George, I'm sure you recognize that, appreciate that, and know that more than any of us here.
Absolutely.
So in terms of the live pit stop aspect of it, while that is certainly a priority and a preference, I don't know if it's the top priority. Now, I can get on board with what you said, Massie, in terms of kind of letting the teams make their own decisions, right? Now, to a certain extent, I can understand why this time they decided to go about it the way they did. I understand that NASCAR in the National Series has indeed raced in wet weather tires on an oval before. I understand that. But they haven't really done so on as fast of an oval as this one before. So, say what you want about, Richmond, we had that data point. Wilkesboro last year had that data point. Martinsville Truck Race had that data point. None of those tracks are as fast. And I'm not going to get into the loads and all the center of gravity stuff, but I can see their perspective on New Hampshire's faster. These wet weather tires, we know that they'll hold up, but we don't want to necessarily release the hounds, so to speak, yet. Now, I could see whether it's down the road later this year, whether it's early next year, whether it's a rule change in general, I could totally see. And Brad Moran, Cup Series managing director, was kind enough to join us on Sirius this morning. Basically said so. He said, that's where we're headed, right? We are headed down a path where we will let the teams decide if and when they want to change tires. I think that you can kind of crawl before you walk. They're doing a good job of that now. What about, and I'll throw this out to you guys, Trey, you haven't spoken yet. Why don't you speak up, young man? What if, right, you kept the non-competitive pit stops, but whenever a caution does fly or whenever there is a stoppage for whether it be, a stage end or whatever reason, I guess it would be a caution on the racetrack or a stage end, you can let teams determine and decide if they want to change to slicks, change to a different set of wet weathers, or have your current wets on. You can still have non-competitive pit stops if you deem that pit road is unsafe and you don't want to put the guys and gals that go over the wall in an unsafe position, but you do allow them to change tires for, the short term at least. I feel like that could be a potential okay, happy medium, short-term fix before they get into a spot where they're comfortable enough to, again, kind of release the hounds and let everybody come down pit road at full pit road speed with live competitive pit stops. I feel like that could be doable because I don't think you want to get into the business of, if we deem it a wet race, then your pit road speed has to go down 20 miles an hour and then this, that, and the other, and then the time over distance. It's a whole thing, right? Feel like there's ways that we can maybe go about it a little bit easier than just going 100% one way or 100% the other way.
Rational. You can't be rational, Davey. It's not how it works, man.
7:41. I have 0 drinks in me. Just give me a little bit.
It's a perfect time to start right now.
But it's 5:00 somewhere. I believe that there are two kind of arguments to this. We could talk about the wet weather tire themselves and whether later on the race, NASCAR should allow teams to make the switch to slicks and, give them that option to risk it, kind of like you would see in Formula One or other motorsports. But Davey's going to get to that in a moment. That's his topic. I don't want to take that from him because I do love my good pal Davey Segal right there. But the non-competitive pit stops, I'd prefer it be safe, like lean towards the side of safety, because we've seen when NASCAR doesn't, and it ends up being a shit show, and we don't want that to happen. So I personally think that they probably erred on the side of caution for the right reasons in terms of not having non-competitive pit stops throughout, and essentially gave the teams a chance to pit. Some could stay out, but I get at some points making it mandatory to pit. But maybe that first pit stop where you had, for example, a Tyler Reddick who was low on fuel, trying to hold out for the fuel, like the rain delay, essentially, like them calling the race, which they didn't. It kind of gave him an advantage, because if everyone was forced to pit and could also refuel, that adds even bigger issue of, well, it's kind of gaming the system a little bit. But if that's the biggest issue in all of this, I'm kind of okay with it.
I think over officiating is something that there's a fine line. We talk about safety, and on the subject of requirement of rain tires or slicks in races in the past have been decided through the teams on what tires we're going to run or put on next based on the driver input. The crew chiefs, the spotters, they talk to the drivers, and the drivers look at the track, because they're on the track. They're all over the track. They're communicating to us. This corner is wet. Take the wet line in this corner, and this corner, and this corner. This is primarily road course. But the same thing applies on ovals. You run the track differently than you would normally. The rain line, it's pretty much the opposite of what you're going to be running on a dry track, because the rubber is slick rather than grip. So I between the safety, I think they do a good job, but the non-competitive pit stops, I think we can look at ARCA as a test subject there, and not very many people are happy with non-competitive pit stops, the 5-minute breaks or the 1-lap stops there.
Yeah. So let's move to our next topic, which kind of falls right in line. Obviously, the wet weather tires were used probably the most predominantly at an oval we've seen. It's been used in spaces at Martinsville a little bit, at Richmond a little bit, but there was really 10, 15, maybe like one segment, one stint of a session. This was used for the latter half of a race for a considerable amount of time on an oval. It's the most data we're going to get from it. So let's Davey, you wanted to touch on this, and there's a lot of different ways we could really talk about these wet weather tires and what we saw at New Hampshire.
I sure did, Trey. Thank you very much for that wonderful setup, my friend. Yeah, it was over 80 laps that the race ended on the wet weather tires, and we've called them wet weather tires a few times here, people. They are not rain tires. They are wet weather tires, because we don't
They're
race
damp
in the
tires.
Rain. Yes, they're damp rubbers. So I wanted to bring that up because I was of the opinion and mindset that this race is over. We passed the halfway point. We were into stage 3, stopped for rain. More rain was on the way. No lights. We're packing her up and we're going home. The Sirius XM car was leading. I had already made a graphic congratulating Tyler Reddick and 2311 Racing on behalf of Sirius XM.
The broadcast jinx.
Jinxed it.
I'm happy though. I was resigned to the fact that this is it, right? And I saw the discourse on social media, like, why are we sitting here? Why are we not using these rain tires? Like, if you're gonna call it, just call it. I was kind of feeding into that, and then I was like, all right, it's not raining. Sunset's in like 2 hours. You only got 80 laps. We could do this, and we did. I just think it was great. Like, the fact that these are available to use now in certain instances, and it gives the fans that are there in person more bang for their buck. This race didn't get cut short because of darkness. It got extended because of the wet weather tires. Went into overtime. I think it's really good. Obviously, as we talked about, there are ways that this can kind of be massaged, manicured a little bit. I feel like the policies are a little bit malleable at this point. We kind of heard that from race control and from the sanctioning body themselves. But I'll throw it out to you guys. George, again, you kind of have a unique perspective on this. The fact that we use wet weather tires, not just in the Cup race, but also in Xfinity, but focusing on Cup, ended the race on them, changed the complexion of it. You had 5 and 6 wide going into turn 1 at New Hampshire. Nobody had any data points on it, and it was kind of just survive and advance every single corner. I, for one, was pretty entertained by it because we didn't really know what to expect, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, earlier I lied when I said I didn't see any of the race. I saw the last probably 30 laps, and that was I saw it at a bar with no sound, so I was just kind of watching to see what happened. And
Choose
at
your
one
adventure.
point, yeah. So the caution came out, and I didn't know if they were being required to put on wets or not. But you saw at the end of the race, or maybe earlier, the guys driving their cars through the grass in particular places, driving under caution in against the inside wall down the front stretch, and just to keep the tires cold or cool them off, because they blister after, even if they're getting wet, they start to blister and lose grip and slip more after even 5 to 7 laps. So you have to baby them, and you have to, from a driver standpoint, you really have to be conservative and choose your battles. I thought it was a really nice finish to the race, and I think it showcased the drivers. Look at Justin Haley. Look where he was running. He was 5th or 6th until the whole green white checkered. I think that's when it happened, when Blaney got spun out. But I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, the racing was really good. I enjoyed watching it on my phone, and it definitely was something that showed some fresh racing, because they had to be strategic in terms of finding different lines, and in terms, a lot of them were in the apron. It was funny during the cautions. You had the train like right against the fence, trying to cool their tires off, and you have to give a guy like Justin Haley a lot of credit. Look at Todd Gilliland. It gets a lot of credit. You saw a lot of shakeup in the top 5. Obviously, Christopher Bell was still the best car in New Hampshire, in both series, which is, why we titled this episode after him. Plus, what we're going to talk about with Massie's topic, doing our job better than us and winning the race.
And by the way, he was best in the dry and the wet, so you can't question
absolutely that. Him and Martin Truex Jr.
Yeah.
Obviously, Truex had an issue on pit road that held it back. The only qualm I have, and Jeff Gluck kind of went deep on this, is I would have liked, because it felt like you could have transitioned to slicks, or at least someone could have tried. And I get this is like the first time with the most amount of data that we had, but I would have liked if they tried the dry, like in terms of like allowed teams to switch, whether like you could have seen, it would have been interesting to see a guy in 20th like try the dries thinking I have no shot to win, but if I get on the dry tires and we run enough clean laps, I could win this race theoretically. So that's the one like qualm I would have said, but so far, every time they've gone to these tires, it's been a success. They also wear better. Like, it seems like you get better racing from them at the short tracks. And I'm hoping NASCAR can take something from this and apply it to your short track racing, where tire wear should matter. And you see it with the wet weather tires and the different lanes they have to choose and everything that goes with it. Massie, you want to add to that?
Amen. Preach, brother. We need to see these tires.
We bring up the conversation we had last week about what you would do for better. Well, it wasn't better short track racing, but should we bring that conversation back into it?
I think we're good avoiding that.
Well, what did you do? I wasn't here.
Neither was I.
It was we discovered that Massie, like Mike Vrabel, would chop his his penis off for a truck race at South Boston.
Yeah,
good to know.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I would like to see a truck race in South Boston.
I bet you would. I bet you would.
So, yeah, I don't even know what to say after that. Derailed me completely. But yeah, I'd love to see the tires like that. Like, if we could just run the wet weather tires in the dry, like hey, let's come up with a way to run tires closer to that. But yeah, it was really cool to see just how effective it was. Like you said, Davey, they were on like 5 wide on the restarts, and during the cautions, it was just wild to watch them look for the wet to cool off their tires. I mean, George, you can vouch for it. It looked like iRacing, where under caution, guys are just goofing around, running the road course, like they were doing that backstretch chicane and doing all that. But yeah, the problem I had was the drivers didn't know they were going to be stuck on the same set of tires for like a great length of time. And so they didn't, if you know, oh, we're going to have to run this long on these tires, they'll manage them better. So because like at one point there were guys wanting to change tires, and NASCAR was like, nah, you got to stay on the same tires.
So they were required that last 80 laps to be on the same set?
No, so eventually there was a long caution where NASCAR first was like, you're going to stay on the same set. And then 100 million caution laps later, they're like, actually, everybody come down and get tires. Like, I just
and
felt
that
like
came after there was a lot of crew chiefs and drivers, most notably Cliff Daniels and Kyle Larson, that were on the radios kind of politicking. Like, Larson was like talking to Cliff, just being like, yeah, I need new tires.
Yeah.
And Cliff was like, you need new tires, right? Yeah, NASCAR, he needs new tires. Yeah, we definitely need new tires. And then they were going to go back green. I don't know if they got the one to go. They hadn't chose yet. But then it was a late call, and they did come back and put on a fresh set of wets. But it was, and again, this is kind of late in the race too. Like, laps are winding down. Darkness is quite literally closing in. I think that, in hindsight, for sure, could have been done better. But to your point, Massie, there was a bit of kind of like figuring it out as they go. And I give them a little bit of grace because, again, it's kind of one of the first times they've been doing it like this. But at the same time, I think that could be cleaned up a little bit and streamlined a little bit more.
Yeah, I just think all the decisions they made were fantastic. I just think they could be a little quicker on the trigger for some of these decisions they're making. But the fact that we got those 80 laps in, like you're saying, Davey, like, I'm just amazed that we got it in. It was, I thought for a bit when it wasn't raining and they still weren't running, I was like, oh no, this is gonna be another Charlotte. They're gonna have 2 hours of sitting and waiting around, and then they're gonna call it.
They learned their lesson, man. They learned their lesson.
Well,
they learned their lesson.
The big difference there is rain falling versus there's if you look at any surface, if it's getting more wet, there's a good chance that NASCAR is going to pump the brakes. If it's staying the same level of saturation, they can run those tires, and that's why they call them wet weather tires versus rain tires. If it's cooler out, if it's cloudy, just like New Hampshire was, if it's going to take them 2 hours to dry the track, and instead of drying the track, they can put the cars out there and race on these tires, they're going to do that. Per the sponsors, for all the money that's put into that show and all the teams, they have to make the best effort, and they have to at least show the best effort to be able to get that race in. So as long as it's not raining, if it's not actively getting more wet on the race surface, then they're okay running that tire.
Race cars are the best air titans, right? They're more expensive. They may be a little bit more valuable and maybe a little bit faster, but I feel like when you put 40 of those race cars or 36 of them out on a racetrack, all the heat that's emanating from those cars, you see the dry line, appear pretty quickly. So as good as the air titans are, I'd rather see race cars drying the track while also taking off laps and being competitive at it. One thing I wanted to ask you guys is we saw a lot up front, dirt racers, right? Bell won. Larson was up front. You had Briscoe that came home in second place. Haley, before he got that splitter damage, and I think he finished 29th, but he was in the top 5, going to finish top 10. I don't know if there's anything to that. My mind would say, yeah, there probably is, because when you're adapting to something brand new, a surface that nobody really knows what to expect, that's fresh, when there's areas that haven't been necessarily raced on yet, you kind of just send her on in there and figure it out. I don't think it's a shocker, and we shouldn't really be that surprised that the guys that have done that historically well on dirt adapted to it well on a 3,500-pound stock car. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, Trey, but I wasn't really surprised by that. Were you?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think they made the right choice at the end of the day, going to the wet weather tires, finishing the race and not cutting it close early. Ultimately, I give NASCAR like a ton of credit. I think their goal always should be to finish every race in possible. And over the last couple of years, they've been more willing to do this. And it definitely showed in some great racing. And you look at the dirt racers, they were surprisingly great. It helps that two of them are the most talented, or three of them are probably the three most talented guys in the series, you could argue, in Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, and Kyle Larson. But it seemed to be that perfect kind of, in dirt racing, you have to find, grip. What did they have to do on Sunday? Find grip. And it just, tend to fall into their skills perfectly.
Kind of had to find water too, which is weird to think about,
Yes.
Massie.
We need that sprinkler, like Jeff Gluck and George Bianchi were saying, we need a sprinkler system on all the tracks.
Not get crazy. Come on now.
It's like me finding my jumper, except it's never wet. It's just bricks.
Thank you, Trey.
You're welcome. I'm just being honest on my skill set. So let's move on to the next topic. George, I know you got to roll on out of here in about a minute, so you're leaving us early. So we'll let you plug anything you want to plug before we get on out of here.
Oh no,
you get on
now I gotta go do some iRacing obligations, but
Sound so excited about it.
Have you been wrecked by Michael Massie? That's who I. Have you been wrecked by Michael Massie?
You may be entitled to financial compensation.
At some point, I think him and I, our bumpers have made contact.
I think I could start a class action lawsuit against him for how many people.
We'll call
you or a loved one.
We'll call JG Wentworth or something like that.
877. Oh.
Yeah. No, the only thing I really want to say is watch for the 45 car this weekend in Nashville. In the truck series, we got Caden Honeycutt driving, and I believe last year Nice won Nashville with Ross.
Yes,
sounds right.
Yeah. So we'll be with him in the truck series for the rest of the year, and then on Saturday, Brennan Poole. We've had a really good run of above average finishes for the team, so it's just a matter of time before we find ourselves in the playoffs or in the winner's circle between the series. So thank you guys for having me, and I'll be happy to join y'all again.
At George Balfanz Jr. on Twitter. George, thanks so much, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Jorge.
Cheers, boys. See ya.
All right.
And he's gone.
And he's gone. But it was good to have him. That was fun. Good job, Massie. Getting another person that you've wrecked on iRacing
onto the show.
It's just it's a theme with you. I've discovered. All right.
Hey, make good connections that way.
It certainly a way. Yes.
I'm sorry for wrecking you. Will you come on my podcast? That's how it works. But speaking, our headline was Christopher Bell, part-time reporter, full-time racer. He seemed to break some news on, was it Friday, which honestly wasn't really breaking news. We've talked about this on the air or on this podcast before. I was about to say Christopher Bell to Joe Gibbs Racing. Chase Briscoe to Joe Gibbs Racing was officially announced earlier today. Massie, you wanted to touch on that?
Yes, obviously the worst kept secret in the garage was announced today as Chase Briscoe was stepping in for Martin Truex Jr., who is retiring from full-time racing at the end of the year. And I think it's a good move. I mean, for Briscoe, it's an amazing move because he's going to get in the best Cup car he's ever been in. And for JGR, I think it's a solid move to pop somebody in there that's already got a couple years experience. And, it could be just a turnkey operation. It's already a team set up for winning races and going deep in the playoffs. And, they believe that Briscoe is the guy that can do what Truex has been doing for these past couple years in that 19 car. I was shocked at the announcement today. Bass Pro Shops still on the car. Johnny Morris called into the announcement, and it sounds like after listening, I didn't realize that Chase Briscoe was a big like hunter fisher kind of guy, but I can kind of see it, like just kind of given his personality and stuff.
He wasn't before. He's damn sure gonna be now.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, if I got money from Bass Pro Shop, I'd tell him I fish.
in a deer stand every weekend too, or every week, I guess. But yeah, what do you guys think about the move? I think it's a solid move. Yeah, I could see them winning a couple races next year, being a big playoff contender.
Makes sense on a lot of levels. I think if you look at the free agent pool for what is going to be 2025, Briscoe probably was your top pick, if not among the top pick of the litter. Again, it makes sense for a lot of reasons too. I mean, you put somebody in that seat that is a proven Cup Series winner. Chase Briscoe is that. I understand it's only been once, but you got to consider the circumstance that he's been around, the equipment that he's driving, et cetera, right?
And it wasn't at Daytona, it was at Phoenix. Like, it was not at a Daytona or Talladega, it was at Phoenix.
Right. It wasn't necessarily a luck-based win, right? It was kind of he went out there, he had a really fast car, if not the fastest car, and he got it done. We also know that he's capable of winning multiple times in the same year. He's done that in the Xfinity Series, and we know that when he was doing that, he was racing against some really stiff competition. Cole Custer, Austin Cindric, Justin Allgaier, right? Like that's pretty stiff, especially back when he was doing it in the Xfinity ranks. And even though he hasn't had as much success in his Cup career as he probably would like, I think this is something that's going to be rejuvenating for him. I found it interesting what he said in the presser today. He's been I don't know what the exact wordage was. I'm paraphrasing, but he looks at this opportunity as the jump start to his Cup career that he's wanted for a while. And, that's not a dig at Stewart-Haas Racing. And I know he didn't mean it that way, but it's very telling, right? Because when he was announced to be replacing Clint Boyer in the 14 car, running for his boyhood idol and the number that he won a championship in, like, it's storybook stuff, right? And it just wasn't able to work out in the ways that Chase saw it working out. I'm sure that he was envisioning winning championships of his own in that number with that team in that car. But as we know, the team's now shuttering its doors. So for JGR, this is a really good get. And for Briscoe, it's obviously a really great landing spot. I got to wonder, like, the first time he's able to test the car, whether it's in the off season or if he shows up at Daytona or when they go to their first non-drafting track, when he's like turning laps at speed, or if he's in the Toyota sim in the off season, his first lap, and he's like, oh, so this is what it's like. Okay. All right. I'm feeling good now. Because again, no disrespect to SHR. It's just they have not been at the level that they are accustomed to. And Joe Gibbs Racing is, if not the best, one of the best teams and has been for years. And you're getting in a car that can win a championship. You have a crew chief who has made some questionable calls this year, I will say that, but has championship pedigree, right? He has won races at this highest level, and he has won championships when he was at Furniture Row. We're talking about James Small. I think that's another aspect to this too, Trey. He, at the presser, said that he feels like he's got something to prove, and I don't doubt him on that. All the arguments and bickering like a married couple that he and MTJ have had, I think it stems from somewhere of James Small's fiery. He's a competitor, and he wants to show people for the rest of this year, of course, but also next year, that he was not just having success because of who was driving his car. He's pretty good at what he does too. And I think that he's going to be hungry to kind of shut up some of those haters that are saying, oh my God, get MTJ somebody else to finish out his career. This is an embarrassment. So you got a hungry driver, as cliche as that is. You got a really competitive crew chief. You got a sponsor, to Massie's point, that we weren't sure was going to stick around, but sounds like they are. And when you have all those things coming together, I think that's going to make a pretty nice recipe. And that recipe is going to be Chase Briscoe in the 19, which I'm going to have to get used to saying, and Victory Lane at least a time or two next year. I'm excited to see what they can do.
Stewart-Haas point this out. He's doing the reverse Tony Stewart, who's his idol, which is like, obviously Tony started his career at Joe Gibbs, then went to Stewart-Haas. Chase does it the other way. I think the best way to describe Chase Briscoe is he's a flat, and it's the same thing for Truex, especially earlier in his career. He's a guy, one, that races clean, but he can grind through a race and get, he might not be great the first 2 stages, but all of a sudden he's 15th or
He was 28th before the rain, and he finished second.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I get that there's rain in there, but
before you know it, he's in the top 10. Like
exactly.
he grinds out great finishes, and I think that is someone that the talent always transcribes when you get to a better car. Like you saw it, when Reddick made a jump from RCR to 2311. Like Reddick got the most out of that car, and now he's getting the most out of the 2311 car. You see it to some degree with Christopher Bell. I mean, I guess the best example is Kyle Larson. Like Larson clearly got as much as he could out of that Chip Ganassi car, getting to the round of 8, winning multiple times in a season, and then goes to Hendrick Motorsports and shows why he's the best race car driver on the planet.
I'm not comparing these two, but you saw with Harvick too. He was
Harvick the same way.
Really good at RCR, first year with SHR, wins the chip. So I'm not saying that's what Briscoe is going to do, but to your point, they're examples.
So you always root for those kind of guys just because they're good dudes, and every interaction I've had with him has been, in the media center has been great, and I bet both of you will say the same thing. And I think it's a really good story. It's something which shocked me when I first read it, and then you think about it, and it's like, I like the move that Joe Gibbs made. It's like, I think he'll fit perfectly in with the team. He's won at the Cup level. It's just kind of this perfect timing for Chase Briscoe and for Joe Gibbs where they're going to, I think, do real damage next year. And I'm not going to call them a championship 4 contender. That's just because I think that's putting too much on. But do I think they can win races, get to the round of 8, and then you never know in those 3 races? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what he could do in the 19 in his first year.
Massie, let me ask you this. Do you think the best driver available went into the best seat available? Because I kind of do.
Yeah, I mean, hands down, best seat available, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no question there. Best driver available. He's definitely up there. I'm just trying to think, like, anyone else I think of doesn't have the Cup experience. I think of someone like a Corey Heim or like a Josh Berry, where Josh Berry's still pretty raw at the Cup level. But yeah, I think too that Joe Gibbs hires, obviously based on talent. Like he gets talented race car drivers, but I think he hires based on character as well. And they both kind of have the faith bond there going on, kind of like Gibbs and Amarola, bringing him in this year. So I think there's a couple layers there to why they really liked Briscoe. And I think it's a deal where, like you're saying, Gibbs is probably watching Briscoe the past couple of years. Like, yeah, his speed isn't that great, but he's getting the most out of this car that he possibly can. Because let's face it, Briscoe boarded the Titanic like right before it hit the iceberg. Like that's him at Stewart-Haas Racing. So yeah, just unfortunate timing for when he joined what was a mega team in the Cup Series, but it hasn't been there the past couple of years, and he didn't have like a Rodney Childers or anything to carry him. I think, you're talking about James Small. People hate on him a lot, but I do think he's a really good crew chief. And I see a lot of times that he'll make the gamble that no one else is brave enough to make. And sometimes obviously when you gamble, it's going to backfire a lot of times. But I could see a situation where he pulls a gamble like early next year and Briscoe steals a win like right out the gate. So I think it's a good pairing. Like you said, championship 4 is too big of an expectation to throw on him right away. But at the same time, he needs to win some races. Like now, you had your run from SHR. You got, a lot of qualifiers to why you didn't run well, didn't win more races there. But you got to go out. I think he's got to win at least like 3 races to make it, to say it was worth the hire. Because otherwise, they could slip somebody else into that super fast 19 car.
Yeah, I mean, there's no excuse for him to not win. I don't know if I'd go 3. I see that. I would say at least 1, probably 2. And then at that point, you're splitting hairs 3, 4, whatever.
Yeah.
But, there's no excuse for him to not perform. If we see a scenario where Briscoe is, clearly the least performing Joe Gibbs Racing driver for a period of the season, I get it. You're the new guy on the block. It'll be Ty Gibbs' third year. I still think Ty's going to win a race this year. You're finding your footing with your crew chief, with your team, with a new manufacturer. By the way, all these new things are kind of coming at you fast and furious. So I could see a scenario where they may get at the gate not as strong as they're envisioning. But, I mean, for goodness sake, you're in the 19 Cup car, man. You got to win.
Do
Especially
something.
given the equipment you got. I found something else interesting, fellas. So you guys heard it, I'm sure. But, when Briscoe was saying when he found out about Stewart House closing, Tony was addressing the team. And, Briscoe raised his hand and he was like, when can we start reaching out to teams? And Tony, which, by the way, congrats to him and Leia Pruitt having a baby on the way. Tony Stewart is a father. Terrifying. I digress. But Chase was like, when can we start reaching out to people? And Tony was like, you can start whenever you want. And Chase just whips out his phone in the meeting where he's getting told that the team's shutting down. And he's texting team presidents like, hey, we just got the news. Wondering if you want to chit chat a little bit. That's
Shoot your shot.
Hell yeah, man. Absolutely. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Shout out to the great one.
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Yes. And Chase took a lot of shots. And clearly some of them went down and they panned out. And, he mentioned something too, which is important. And we talked about it, the Bass Pro aspect of it. Chase said that JGR was the only place that did not ask him, what are you bringing? Is Mahindra coming with you? Is High Point coming with you? What are you bringing sponsorship wise? You got 5 mil, 10 mil? What you got? JGR, according to Chase, didn't ask him that. His words, not mine. They wanted me for me. As cliche as that is, I feel like that really does matter. And I don't think that turns into speed, but I feel like the mindset could go a long way, Trey, in making that partnership a fruitful one for not just the next 2-3 years, but I'm talking 5-10 years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed. All right, let's move to our final topic. Jordan Bianchi just dropping some bombs this weekend. The announcement of the schedule changes to 2025, while we could highlight Bowman Gray maybe appears to be the Clash and Mexico City getting a race, we wanted to focus more on the playoffs. Yes, the playoffs.
You kidding me?
And 3 races are going at, and 3 races are going in. And starting with the ones that are going out, I think 2 of these maybe not shocking: Watkins Glen, Atlanta. And then to me, the most surprising one was Homestead, which I think, in my opinion, should be the championship race. And then coming into the playoffs is New Hampshire, Gateway, and then obviously Darlington because of the scheduling quirk, which, with the Olympic break this year, Darlington is actually now the last race of the postseason, not the first race of the playoffs. So that's why Darlington's going back. That's the one that makes sense. You had to get rid of one. So I'm assuming that's why Atlanta is out. They said for Homestead, they wanted it, to be in March because they needed another warm weather race because of no Fontana this year. So overall, are you for this? Are you against this? Are you like, I like this race in, but this race shouldn't be in? Massie, you can go first on this one.
I don't want to be a negative Nancy, but
old man, get off my lawn.
I don't I want to be positive. I feel like I've been positive most of the show, so now it's time to let the negative out. Who asked for this? Who asked for any of this? Who's well, we gotta get Homestead out the playoffs. How dare it occupy a playoff? Let's give it to New Hampshire and Gateway. That'll get the viewers in. No. I don't understand. Especially with the short track package the way it is now, you want to highlight it more by having half the playoffs be on this package. It doesn't make sense to me. That my hope is that there's more to this Homestead thing, that they're giving it an early date so that maybe they do some renovations over the next year and get that thing in tip-top shape to host a championship date. That's right, not a playoff date, a championship date in 2026. that's my hope for it. But there hasn't been any talks about that I'm aware of. So it feels like they're just moving. Like if you want to put a warm weather track further up the season, move Sonoma to the West Coast swing. That's your answer right there. I don't know. I just don't understand. Like, I'm on board with a lot of, like, Atlanta is going to be part of the midseason tourney, or
Kicks off Amazon's coverage.
Yeah, the bracket challenge.
And you take a super speedway out of the postseason, which I'm a fan of.
And the other thing, I don't get taking Watkins Glen out. So my thought was that we were gonna stop doing the Roval and start doing the Charlotte Oval.
Doesn't sound like it.
Doesn't sound like that, because I think you need one road course in the playoffs.
Definitely.
But man, for every great decision that happens, there's got to be a decision like that. Like, we're at such a high from the rain tires being such a wet weather tires. Sorry, I said rain tires.
All in the swear jar.
But such a high from that, and then just get brought right back down by these schedule changes. I don't see any silver lining for it.
So I want to stress too, this is what Jordan's reporting.
It's going to happen.
I take that as fact because Jordan's always, spot on, but just want to get that out there. This is not happening for sure.
It's not official.
It's not official, but it's being reported by Jordan and The Athletic, which is all but official, as we know. Just want to make sure we were clear on that. I'm kind of with you, Massie, and I hate to be, because I don't want to poo-poo these ideas. I'm open to them for sure. Like, I think Gateway is deserving of getting their flowers. They've asked for a cup race for a while. They finally got it. The fans have come out in droves. That market has supported that racetrack. They have supported motorsports. You had Luda and T-Pain performing at the racetrack. That's badass. I don't care what you say. So I'm cool with switching some stuff around. I'm cool with experimenting, and I'm all for keeping the playoffs fresh and making sure that you put an emphasis on differentiation of track types, new tracks in, old tracks out, et cetera, et cetera. And I get that you got to play the politics game a little bit and make sure that SMI gets their share, ISC, NASCAR, whatever we're calling it now, gets their share. I get that. But I found myself agreeing with Jordan's coworker, Jeff Gluck, my man, on the teardown. I have a sentimental connection to Homestead because I grew up, just like you guys, with that racetrack as the championship race, as the finale. I've been there a handful of times for the championship race as a fan with my dad. I just love the Miami vibe there, the teal paint, the added pink to it. Now, like, the whole aspect of racing and crowning a champion at Homestead in the Miami market is cool. And I'm not saying that, the fact that the championship's not there, like, I'm not getting into that. I wish that was the case, but it's not. Jeff's point, which I agree with, is when you had Homestead in the spring, I think it was like the second or third race of the year a couple years ago, it just kind of didn't have a purpose. And the product that racetrack provides needs a purpose. The product is too good and the racing is too fun to be buried or just put somewhere where it frankly doesn't matter. Like, yeah, I know every race matters. You're paying points every week, whatever. But having it where it is now, which is in a pivotal round, in a pivotal spot of the postseason, that's important. That provides emphasis. And tell you what else, it draws traffic. Like, I think Homestead was close to, if not sold out last year, maybe the last couple of years, when it was in that spot in the round of 8, because it's an important race. It matters and it means a lot. So I hate, if this report is true, which again, it's going to be probably, I hate to see that, that Homestead's going to leave the playoffs, because I really, really hate that. Gateway, I'm fine with bringing that in. Atlanta, we kind of knew that was coming out because we got that news earlier. And again, super speedway out of the postseason. I'm a big fan of that. I think if you have a road course, great. If you have a super speedway, fine. You want to have several short tracks, cool with that. Intermediates, fine with that too. But to have, Massie, you said it yourself, half of the races in next year's postseason, if this report is true, are going to be short tracks. And I'm an optimist, and I hope that they get it a little bit more figured out. And, the repaves have been promising. Iowa was better than we thought. Wilkesboro was better than we thought. New Hampshire with the wet weather tires, that was better than we thought. But to have 5 of the 10 races in the playoffs, literally 50%, half of your playoffs on a type of track where we all agree, so does NASCAR, is inferior to the other races that we see right now on faster, bigger tracks. I just have a hard time getting behind that. I'm going to watch. I'm going to enjoy it all. I'm going to go to as many as I can. And I'm sure you guys are too. And we all are going to enjoy and watch and banter about it here on Happy Hour. But the Homestead one hurts. It really does. And the whole idea of more short tracks, I'm all for. But maybe if the product's better on intermediates and 2-mile ovals, we focus on that in the short term while we try to correct the long-term fix, which is improving the short track package, Trey.
Yeah, just at the end of the day, it's like womp womp. That's how I feel about it. I get Darlington going back in. Like, I'm not ignoring it. You flip that with Atlanta. It's easy. I'm okay with that. I think you made a good point about Gateway in terms of their willingness to make it an event. And obviously the Flames to start the race. Like, I think that could be, I'm okay with that.
Reward them for what they've worked for and what they said they wanted.
Like, if you just did those 2 switches, like move the Glen out and move Atlanta out, I'm fine with it. And I don't want to even discredit New Hampshire. It's Homestead. To me, like, Homestead and Kansas produce the best racing in the series. And you can't do a championship race in Kansas, or at least it'd be very cold to do a championship race in Kansas in November, but you can do it in Miami in November. And I think you might be right, Massie. I know there's a report out, I think also by Jordan Bianchi when he first overlaid the schedule, that Homestead, like, the government is trying to create a package to get the championship race back to Homestead. So maybe that's another reason why, and they're just not saying it. And if that's the case, then I'm okay for sacrificing.
I hope that happens. Let's temper our expectations.
I hope
it happens.
Was this 21 when they went Daytona Homestead, right? Which
Maybe, yeah.
that was COVID, so I kind of get keeping it, kind of local. But they went Daytona Homestead, and it just, that race is so good, but you're gonna forget about it, honestly.
Yeah.
And
it's buried.
And remember Atlanta, like when Atlanta was the second race of the season for years, like the crowds were terrible, and it really kind of was killing that track until they started putting it in better spots.
And I get that, like, there has to be a track that takes that date. Like,
right.
we're not saying that, like, you just take that week off or whatever, but I mean, not all tracks are created equal. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, they're not. Homestead is one of the best. And to put it somewhere where it's not really getting the recognition or respect that I think it deserves, and, the fans and competitors all love it, just putting it there, it's just, it's not conducive to the best schedule, in my opinion.
What I think would be a better move would be to put, I'm not saying better move than Homestead. Like, Homestead in the playoffs is top of the cake. But if you wanted to put something new in the playoffs, put Nashville in there. Like, that's the one where it's exciting racing, but right now it's in the dead heat of summer. Like, everybody out there this weekend's going.
You have to do it as a night race. It's so hot.
Have to.
Yeah, it's so hot. Like, put that in the fall in the playoffs. You have a good race, better weather. Not scorching hot, and like, I'd be more excited for that than I would New Hampshire going in.
I'm down for Iowa.
Yeah, I would. The problem with Nashville is you're going to have no fans show up on Sunday because they're going to be in Knoxville, and then everyone on Sunday is going to be at the football game. Like, you know what I mean? That's the problem about putting Nashville in the fall. Like,
I mean, look, there are reasons for all these decisions that we have no idea and may never know. Like,
we're not smart.
Say what we want.
Well, Davey's really smart. I don't know about Massie myself.
Say what we want, but like, Ben Kennedy is really, he is really smart, and he has information that he's privy to that we will never be. He has conversations along with O'Donnell and Phelps and all these people. Like, they're the ones that talk to the racetracks. They're the ones that are dealing with the finances and the schedules and X, Y, and Z. Like, I'm fully cognizant of all that. So I'm sure that these changes are being done for a good reason. Maybe we'll find out about them. Maybe we won't. But the fan in me is just like, Don't like Sam Mayer said this about whenever they put dirt on Bristol. They massacred my boy. Like, don't massacre my boy, Homestead Miami Speedway anymore. Like, put some respect back on their name. And
keep my track's name out your
mouth. We're gonna know the schedule before we go to Homestead later this year, obviously. I hope. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go this year, but I will certainly cherish it a little bit more knowing what's coming.
That's a good way to end that topic. All right, quickly, our final fun segment. We all know what chase Christopher Bell was referring to, but quickly, let's do the wrong answers only edition of who was Christopher Bell referring to when he said Chase is joining Joe Gibbs Racing. Massie, you want to go first?
Yeah, let's kick it off with legendary comedian making his sports debut, Chevy Chase. He's like 80 years old now. He's getting in the 19 car. He might be older than Joe Gibbs, but he's gonna, you're gonna get plenty of slapstick humor and good fun exchanges between him and James Small. Chevy Chase going from National Lampoon's vacation movies to the number 19 car.
That's a good one.
I'll go Chase Utley, Philadelphia Phillies legend, second baseman, World Series champ.
Well, Macby is part of his pit crew.
Sure.
Do you know who I'm referring to?
No.
If you ever seen the show, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Nope.
Okay, that's who I'm referring to. It's a great show. Highly recommend.
Appreciate that.
He's played by Rob McElhenney, if that helps.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go Chase Utley. I'm a Nats fan, so like Chase Utley terrorized my youth for a good period of time. I don't know if Christopher Bell is a big baseball guy. I don't know if they played a lot in Oklahoma. I'm sure Oklahoma's good. I don't know how far they went in College World Series this year, but Chase Utley, why not?
I think Kyle Larson had the best wrong answers only when he said Chase Elliott. I think that's the best answer.
Did you notice in that tweet, his hashtag, like, Chase Elliott's hashtag is like dig, like DI9. He made it D19. So it looked the same, but
it was pretty good. Shout out to Kyle Larson.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with former dunk contest participant, former Minnesota Timberwolf, and now Olympian in beach volleyball. Chase Buttinger. So
great call.
He did a White Man Can't Jump tribute in his dunk contest. Now he's playing. He was like the number one volleyball player coming out of high school, and now he's playing beach volleyball, and he's going to be on the U.S. Olympic team in beach volleyball.
Built different.
He was. So that will do it. Tweet us at Trey Lyle BT, at M_Massey22, at Davey Center, or leave us in the comments down below. What chase was Christopher Bell referring to? Wrong answers only edition of that. Massie, you are not doing Fire on Fridays this week because you did it last week. Davey will, of course, hear his smooth tones of voice on Sirius XM. And
hey, let me still plug something.
What do you want to plug?
Interview with Leyland Honeyman.
We'll be on the episode of Bringing the Heat with Brian Nolan, so you can listen to it there.
Yeah,
right here on this podcast feed. Or if you want to read the article, frontstretch.com. How about that? Look, I plugged both.
And by the way, on SiriusXM, you will not hear me sounding like Darth Vader and or a chipmunk.
You mean like this?
Precisely.
Or like this.
That's my favorite one. I like that one.
This one?
Yeah, that one.
The deeper one sounded like Rick Allen on Sunday.
Oh, I felt bad for him.
Hey,
I felt bad for him. You could tell he was struggling big time.
Good job considering.
I think some of us who have talked a lot on radio have been there when they're sick and they have to be on the air. So shout out to Rick Allen.
You heard his final call? He's like, Christopher Bell.
Also, the rain, like that type of weather is like the worst when you're sick too.
Yeah.
It's like muggy and
he powered through. Good for him.
Shout out to Rick Allen. All right, so that will do it for this episode of Happy Hour. We'll be back next week with the most anticipated episode. It's finally coming. Will Tom Bull show up? Have to tune in next week. See you, everyone.
Doubt it.